Today, we're going to do something a little bit dangerous. We're going to dismantle a lie.
hmm
It's a lie that I think most of us have internalized, maybe since we were, 5 years old, sitting in a classroom?
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
It's on those motivational posters in the break room. It's the subtext of every single biography of every billionaire you've ever read. And it is probably the number one reason you feel that little twinge of guilt every time you hit the snooze button.
You're talking about the lie of meritocracy.
Exactly. That narrative that says, output equals input.
Right. This very clean, simple equation.
The idea that if you aren't successful yet, it is simply mathematically because you are not working hard enough. You know, the whole drill, wake up at 4 a.m., drink the raw egg smoothies.
Take the cold showers, hustle till your eyes bleed.
Yes. The cultural assumption is that if you just grind hard enough, the universe is somehow contractually obligated to hand you success.
And it is an incredibly comforting story, isn't it? Because it gives us this sense of total control. If success is just a matter of effort, then failure. Well, failure is just a matter of laziness. But today's deep dive is all about shattering that illusion.
Right.
And we're not doing it to make you cynical or to tell you to give up. We're actually doing it to make you strategic. We're unpacking the book, The Unfair Advantage by Ash Ali and Hassan Kuba.
And to really, set the stage for this, let's look at a quote from someone who definitely made it. This is from Evan Spiegel, the founder of Snapchat.
Right.
He became the world's youngest self-made billionaire at 24. Now, usually when you ask a guy like that how he did it, this is the part where he says, I built this with blood, sweat, and tears in a garage.
That's the script. That's what you expect to hear.
Exactly. But Spiegel didn't do that. He said, and I'm quoting here, I am a young, white, educated male. I got really, really lucky. And life isn't fair.
Wow.
That is, it's unusually honest for a tech mogul. It almost feels like he's breaking character.
He is. It's a startling admission.
Yeah.
Spiegel is basically acknowledging the quiet part out loud. He grew up in a multi-million-dollar household in Pacific Palisades. His parents were high-powered lawyers. He went to Stanford. He had access to mentors, legal advice, and capital that 99.9% of the human population simply doesn't have.
And that gets to the core premise of this book.
It's the whole thing. Success is not just hard work. The real formula is actually hard work plus unfair advantages.
So the mission for our deep dive today is pretty clear. We're not here to, bash Evan Spiegel for being lucky. And we are definitely not here to complain about the system being rigged.
No, that's not the point.
The point is to take this framework, the unfair advantage, and help you perform a strategic audit on yourself. We want to help you find your own version of what Warren Buffett calls an economic moat.
Precisely. And what gives this book so much credibility, I think, is the contrast between the two authors. You have Ash Ali, who describes himself as the street-smart hustler. He dropped out of college at 17, grew up in a really tough, poor neighborhood, but he hustled his way into becoming the first marketing director of Just Eat.
Which was a massive
A company that eventually IPO'd for £1.5 billion.
So that's the pull yourself up by your bootstraps guy.
Yep.
But then you have Hassan Kuba.
Right, the book-smart strategist. He was kind of a late bloomer, had a comfortable middle-class upbringing, really focused on strategy and efficiency to build a passive income lifestyle business.
So they come from completely opposite ends of the socioeconomic
It's
spectrum.
totally different worlds.
Yeah.
Yet they arrived at the exact same mathematical conclusion about how success actually happens.
Okay, so before we get into the how-to, the practical stuff, we need to clear up the definition. Because when I hear the phrase unfair advantage, my brain, it immediately goes to something negative.
Yeah, that's normal.
I think of nepotism or bribery or, doping in sports. It just sounds, it sounds unfair.
And that's the most common misconception. It's really the first thing we need to unlearn. The authors are very, very clear about this. An unfair advantage is not necessarily unethical or illegal. It is simply a condition, an asset, or a circumstance that puts you in a favorable business position compared to your competition.
They use a sports analogy in the book that really made this click for me. Basketball.
It's the perfect analogy.
Right.
Imagine you're playing basketball. Being 7 feet tall is an unfair advantage.
You can't learn height.
You cannot hustle your way into being taller. A player who's, say, 5'6" can practice free throws for 10 hours a day, and they absolutely should. But if they go one-on-one with a 7-footer who also practices,
The short player is getting crushed every time.
because the tall player has a structural fundamental leg up.
And it's not like the tall player earned that height. They just have it.
Exactly. And in the business world, this translates directly to that economic moat concept we mentioned. If you launch a startup, you need a defense. Maybe it's a patent or a brand or a network effect. For individuals, your unfair advantages are your personal moat.
They're the things that can't be easily copied or bought.
Cannot be copied or bought by your competition. That's the key.
And this really highlights the danger of what the authors call hard work worship. They aren't saying be lazy.
Not at all.
They're saying hard work is the baseline. It's the entry fee just to get on the court. But hard work without leverage, without using your unfair advantages, is just manual labor. It leads to burnout, not breakthroughs.
There's a great line in the notes from Katerina Fake, the co-founder of Flickr. She says, "Working hard is overrated. It is about working the system."
I like that.
Think about digging a hole. You can dig a hole with a spoon.
Yeah.
You'll be sweating. You'll be exhausted. You will be working harder than anyone else on the job site.
Right, you'll feel very virtuous.
Very virtuous. But the person who shows up with a backhoe, the unfair advantage, is going to win, even if they show up late and take a long lunch.
Okay, that is a depressing image, me with a spoon while a bulldozer drives by. But let's ground this in reality. The author's own stories are perfect examples of how these advantages can look really different. It's not always about having a rich dad. Let's start with Ash Ali.
Ash's story is fascinating because on paper, he had all the disadvantages. He was the child of immigrant parents, growing up in a very poor, crime-ridden area of Birmingham in the UK.
Oh, wow.
He talks about witnessing a shotgun murder literally across the street from his house.
So not exactly the Pacific Palisades upbringing of the Snapchat founder.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Far from it. He dropped out of college at 17, so he had no degree, no money, no connections. But Ash had a specific set of traits that became his advantage. He had that hustle gene. There's this story from when he was just 13. He had a paper route, delivering newspapers. But he realized walking the whole route took too much time and energy. It just wasn't scalable. So what did he do?
What did he do?
He subcontracted half the route to a friend.
At 13, he was outsourcing labor before he hit puberty. That is amazing.
Exactly. He took a cut of the profit for organizing the deal. He was acting like a manager, not a laborer, even then.
That's incredible.
And then later, he started selling encyclopedia CDs to his neighbors. He didn't realize it at the time, but he was technically pirating software.
Just burning CDs and selling them.
Burning them and selling them. But through that, he learned sales. He learned about rejection. He learned how to convince people to buy something they didn't even know they needed.
Okay, so the turning point for him, it seems to be this story about a shoe warehouse. This was, what, 1998? The internet is barely a thing.
Right. It's the Wild West of the internet. A friend's parents owned a shoe business. Ash, completely self-taught, goes into his parents' attic and builds them an e-commerce site from scratch. And you have to remember the context. His family thought he was completely insane.
And there's that detail in the book about his 19th birthday card.
Yeah, this part really hits hard. His siblings gave him a card that said, "Future.com millionaire" on it.
Which sounds nice on the surface.
But it wasn't a compliment. It was sarcasm. They were mocking him for spending all his time in the attic playing on computers instead of getting a real job.
That's just brutal. But he kept the card, didn't he?
He did. He propped it up on his desk and used it as fuel. But here is the critical part, the unfair advantage part of the story.
Right.
It wasn't just the hard work in the attic.
Right.
His site happened to get nominated for an Internet Award. That nomination, which was pure chance, pure luck, got him headhunted to London. And that move put him in the orbit of a tiny, unknown startup called Just Eat.
Which, of course, eventually IPO'd for billions, making him financially free basically overnight.
He went from being the black sheep dropout to the family success story. But he admits, if he hadn't had that specific timing with the internet boom or the luck of that award nomination, the hard work might not have paid off in the same way.
It's the backhoe showing up at the right time.
It's the backhoe. He could have worked just as hard on a different idea at a different time and ended up with nothing.
Okay, so now let's contrast that with Hassan Kuba.
Hassan is the late bloomer. He was born in Baghdad. His family fled the war. They moved to London. He had middle-class stability. His parents expected him to be a doctor or an engineer, the classic immigrant parent pressure cooker.
I know that narrative well. Be a doctor or you're a failure. It's a binary choice.
Exactly. But Hassan was lost. He dropped out of med school. He didn't want to be an investment bank. He ended up buying an online business course, and he was terrified it was a scam.
I'm sure.
But he stuck with it, and he built a successful lifestyle business. But his big unfair advantage realization came much later. during what he calls his Manila moment.
This story really stuck with me. It's almost cinematic in how heartbreaking it is.
It's intense. He was living the so-called digital nomad dream, traveling in the Philippines. He walks out of his Airbnb one morning and is just surrounded by starving children begging. And one little girl points to his water bottle.
Wow.
She wasn't begging for money. She just wanted his clean water.
That's a heavy, heavy reality check.
It completely shattered him. He realized in that moment that his self-made success was built on this mountain of invisible privileges. He was a native English speaker, the language of global business.
Right.
He had a British passport, which meant freedom of movement. He had a safety net. If his business failed, he could just move back in with his parents.
A safety net those kids would never have.
Never. Those starving children could work 10 times harder than him, have twice his IQ, and never, ever achieve what he did, simply because they lacked those foundational unfair advantages.
So you have both authors, both worked incredibly hard, but they both admit that timing, location, and these specific privileges were the rocket fuel. And this brings us to the elephant in the room. The word that business people, entrepreneurs, they usually hate to hear, luck.
The dreaded L word. We hate it because it feels unearnable. It feels messy.
Yeah.
It messes with the clean narrative.
It does.
You have the meritocracy believers on one side, usually rich people, saying, I earned this, I built this. And then on the other side, you have fatalism, people saying, it's all random, the system is rigged, why even bother trying?
But the authors argue, and I think this is so important, that the truth is in the middle. They bring up Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. When he was asked if his success was hard work or luck, he didn't even hesitate. He just said, massively both.
It's a spectrum. It's not one or the other.
No.
And the authors use Oprah Winfrey as the ultimate case study here because she is the queen of the self-made narrative.
Right. I mean, if anyone seems to defy this theory, it's her. She overcame poverty, sexual abuse, racial discrimination. She talks about wearing potato sacks as dresses.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like an unfair advantage. That sounds like a massive, massive disadvantage.
And it was.
Yeah.
These were huge, terrible hurdles. But if you look deeper, as the authors did, you see the unfair advantages that allowed her to vault over those hurdles. First, biology. She was born with a genius-level IQ and a natural, towering talent for oratory and empathy. Just a gift.
Okay, but talent isn't enough if it just dies on the vine, right? We all know incredibly talented people who never went anywhere.
Exactly. And that is where the luck comes in. Her grandmother taught her to read at age 3. In her environment at that time, that was incredibly rare.
That's a huge head start.
A huge head start. She was nicknamed the preacher in her church because she could recite Bible verses by heart. This gave her early-stage confidence and public speaking practice. And then later, her father implemented this strict discipline of taking her to the library constantly.
So it's this perfect storm of early nurture meeting natural talent.
Without that specific grandmother, without that specific church giving her a platform, without that specific father pushing education, her genius might have gone completely unnoticed. Hard work was the engine, absolutely. But luck provided the road and the fuel.
Okay, so how do we handle this psychologically? Because acknowledging luck can feel really disempowering. It's easy to spiral into, well, I wasn't born a genius and my grandmother didn't teach me to read at 3, so I guess I'll just, watch Netflix.
It's a real danger. And the author suggests using the Serenity Prayer as a business tool, which I found fascinating.
I haven't been to a recovery meeting in a while, but that's the grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
The courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
And in business, you accept the luck and circumstances you cannot change. You didn't choose your parents, your birthplace, or your IQ. That is the serenity part. Accept it. But you have the courage to change your mindset, your work ethic, and your strategy. And the wisdom is knowing you need both to win. You don't fight the tide. You learn to sail.
That segues perfectly into the mindset section of the book. We hear so much about the growth mindset from Carol Dweck, the idea that I can learn anything and the power of not yet.
Which is a great concept, and I love Dweck's work. It's truly changed education. But the authors offer a slight critique of it.
Okay.
They argue that a pure growth mindset can actually be delusional if it ignores real-world constraints. You cannot simply say, I am not an astronaut yet, if you are 50 years old with a heart condition.
Right. Some doors do close.
Physics and biology are real constraints.
Yeah.
Ignoring them isn't optimism, it's just foolishness.
So they propose a hybrid, what they call the reality growth mindset.
Right. It's a balance. You keep your feet on the ground, accepting your hard limits, the odds, the market reality. But you keep your head in the clouds, believing in the possibility of what you can build within those constraints.
And they break this down into 4 key characteristics. The first one is vision.
Yeah, seeing what will exist before it actually does.
Yeah.
Ash talks about the early days at Just Eat. They were having lunch in this cheap diner, and they were visualizing a 50 million pound valuation.
And at the time, they were nothing.
They were nobodies, working out of a basement. But that vision dictated their behavior. They started acting like a 50 million pound company long before they actually were one.
Then there's resourcefulness. I love the quote they use from Reid Hoffman here again. Jump off a cliff and assemble an airplane on the way down.
It's about figuring it out when you don't have the manual, when there's no instruction book.
And then you have lifelong learning, the idea that degrees aren't enough anymore. You have to be constantly upgrading your mental operating system. And finally, grit.
Just pure resilience in the face of rejection, getting knocked down and getting back up over and over.
They use a Harry Potter analogy for this mindset, which, as a fan, I really appreciate. The Sorting Hat.
Yes, this was great. The Sorting Hat wanted to put Harry in Slytherin. It saw the potential for darkness in him, for ambition at any cost.
Right, it saw his potential.
But Harry chose Gryffindor. He whispered, "Not Slytherin." The point is, your circumstances, which is the hat, might suggest one path. Maybe the hat says you're poor, you should just focus on survival. But your vision, your choice, can override the default settings. You can choose to be brave.
I love that. Okay, so we have the definition, we have the mindset. Now we need the audit, the practical tool. The authors introduced the MILES framework. This is really the meat and potatoes of the book, MILES.
This is the tool to audit your personal assets. It's an acronym. M for money, I for intelligence and insight, L for location and luck, E for education and expertise, and S for status.
And the key rule here, which I found so relieving, is you don't need all of them.
No, you don't, correct. In fact, almost no one has all of them. Successful startups are usually the sum of the co-founders' unfair advantages.
Right.
If you have the insight but you don't have the money, you partner with someone who has the money or the status. It's like assembling a team for a heist movie. Everyone has a different specialty.
Okay, let's break these down one by one. Let's start with M for money or capital.
The brutal truth is, money creates money. Wealth creates a safety net. There's a Jay-Z quote in the book that just sums it up perfectly. Even if I fell, I'd land on a bunch of money.
Must be nice. It just completely changes how you play the game, doesn't it?
It changes your risk tolerance fundamentally. I mean, in the startup world, we talk about runway. That's how many months you can survive with zero income.
Right.
If you have a runway of 18 months because of family money or savings, you can take huge risks. You can pivot your product. You can fail twice and just keep going. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you might only get one shot. If you miss that shot, you're homeless. That anxiety changes every single decision you make.
They give a really technical but powerful example of this with Zoopla versus SEO.
Right. So Zoopla is this massive property site in the UK. When they started, there were other smaller sites ranking higher than them on Google. Now, a bootstrapper, without money, would have to work on their SEO, their search engine optimization.
Writing blogs, tweaking keywords.
Praying for clicks. And that takes a lot of time. Zoopla, they had funding. They didn't bother with any of that. They just bought the companies that were ranking above them.
That is the definition of a brute force unfair advantage. They literally just bought the leaderboard.
Money buys speed. And then, of course, there's the bank of mom and dad. The case study of Yuan Blair, Tony Blair's son, is so telling. His startup, White Hat, made a loss early on. In a normal world, that's serious trouble. The bank calls in the loan, you might be done. But he received a significant capital contribution, which was interest-free, that just kept the lights on. That is a massive competitive moat that almost nobody else has.
But wait, before we get too discouraged, because I definitely don't have Tony Blair on speed dial, there's a flip side to not having money, right? The book talks about this.
Absolutely. And this is so crucial. Constraints breed creativity.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
It is. We see this all the time. Rich kids or really well-funded startups can become complacent. They solve problems inefficiently by just throwing cash at them. They hire too many people. They buy expensive software they don't even use. Ashley had no money when he started, so he had to utilize what he calls growth scrapping. He had to find free guerrilla ways to market his business because he literally couldn't afford ads. That made his business model more robust in the long run. When the funding dries up, the scrappy founders are the ones who survive.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Let's move to the I in Miles. Intelligence and insight. Now, intelligence seems obvious, be smart. but they break it down into different flavors.
Yeah, it's not just about IQ. There are book smarts doing well on exams.
Hmm.
Think of the Collison brothers who founded Stripe. Patrick created a new coding language when he was 16. John got the highest exam scores in all of Ireland. That is raw computational processing power. If you have that, you should use it.
But not everyone is a coding prodigy. So then you have street smarts.
Right. Emotional intelligence, people skills, and critically, what the authors call bullshit detection.
I like that.
Knowing when you're being played, knowing how to read a room, knowing how to close a deal. This is often an advantage for people who grew up in tougher environments because they had to develop these skills just to survive.
And the third one is creative intelligence, connecting the dots, like Steve Jobs combining calligraphy with computing. But the second part of the I is insight. This feels absolutely crucial for startup.
It is. Insight is seeing a gap that other people miss. And it's often born from your own personal frustration. The case study of Tristan Walker is perfect here.
He founded Walker & Co., the company that's behind Bevel razors.
Exactly. Now, Tristan had some traditional advantages, Wall Street background, Stanford Business School, but his real unfair advantage was his personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
As an African-American man, he suffered terribly from razor burn and ingrown hairs, because mass-market razors were designed for straight hair, not coarse, curly hair.
So his advantage was that he was the customer. He was solving his own problem.
Precisely. Procter & Gamble has billions of dollars in R&D. They have labs full of scientists in white coats. But they didn't have his lived experience. They didn't feel the pain on their own face every morning. He solved his own problem. Now compare that to Will Shu from Deliveroo.
This is the part of the book I love. He was an investment banker, right?
Yeah, Morgan Stanley. Very different background. He moved from New York to London and just realized London food delivery was a complete disaster. That was the initial insight. But he didn't just code an app and sit in a nice office.
He rode the bike.
He rode the bike for 9 months, 8 hours a day. He wasn't the target customer in the same way Tristan was, so he had to go out and earn the insight by doing the actual work.
That's incredible.
He learned the logistics. He learned about the angry chefs, the confusing addresses, the rain. That gave him what he calls insight through doing. He knew things about delivery that no amount of market research could ever tell him. He built his moat by sweating on a bicycle.
Let's move on to location and luck. We've talked a bit about luck, but let's dig into location. I mean, in the age of Zoom and remote work, does location actually still matter?
Surprisingly, yes. A lot. It's a phenomenon called clustering. Why is tech in Silicon Valley? Why are tailors on Savile Row in London? Why is finance in London or New York?
Is it just the vibe? Or is there something more tangible going on?
It's tangible. It's what academics call knowledge spillover. In Silicon Valley, you go to a coffee shop on University Avenue, and the person sitting next to you is an angel investor, and the person behind you in line is a brilliant engineer complaining about a specific coding problem. You overhear things. You meet people by complete accident. The environment facilitates serendipity.
The book uses Huda Kattan, the beauty mogul, as an example of this.
Huda Beauty. She started in the U.S., in Oklahoma, and then went to a top makeup school in L.A. But she realized her aesthetic, the darker brows, the heavy contouring, the whole Middle Eastern look would resonate much more powerfully in Dubai.
She moved.
She moved to Dubai, she pivoted her location, and became a billionaire brand. She went to where her market fit was highest. She geographically arbitrated her skills.
But then you have the counter-argument, right? Like Basecamp, the software company. They built their company remotely from Chicago and Copenhagen specifically to avoid the Silicon Valley noise.
Which is a location strategy in itself. That's the point. They used their location to build a culture of deep work, avoiding the distraction of the hustle and the constant poaching of employees. The key is to be intentional about your location, not passive. Don't just stay where you are because it's comfortable if it doesn't actually serve your mission.
And on the luck side of L, there's this incredible study by Bill Gross about timing.
This data is just mind-blowing. Bill Gross runs Idealab. He analyzed 200 startups to see what factor mattered most for success. He looked at the idea, the team, the business model, the funding, and the timing.
And what did he find?
He found that timing accounted for 42% of the difference between success and failure. More than the idea, more than the team.
42%. So you have to catch the wave. He caught the smartphone wave. Airbnb caught the recession wave when people needed extra cash.
Exactly. But you can also be too early. And think about VR virtual reality. It's been too early for about 10 years. If you're too early, you burn all your money just educating the market. You basically clear the path for the guy behind you to win.
So, is there a way to manufacture luck? Or are we just leaves in the wind here?
Well, the authors cite Richard Wiseman's research on this. He did this fascinating experiment with two people, let's call them Martin, who thinks he's a lucky person, and Brenda, who thinks she's unlucky.
Okay.
Wiseman put some money on the sidewalk on their path to a coffee shop.
Let me guess. Martin found it.
Martin saw it immediately, picked it up, and then went into the coffee shop and struck up a conversation with the businessman inside, which led to an opportunity. Brenda walked right past the money.
She didn't see it.
Didn't see it. She was too anxious, too focused on just getting to the door. She bought her coffee and she sat alone.
That is wild. So the money, the opportunity was there for both of them.
The opportunity was identical. The difference was attention. The takeaway is that luck is often a mindset of openness and observation. Lucky people are looking for opportunities. Unlucky people are often too anxious or tunnel-visioned to see what is right in front of them.
So just pay attention. That in itself is an unfair advantage. Okay, next up is education and expertise.
Right, and education really provides three distinct pillars: knowledge, network, and signaling.
Signaling's the brand name, right? I went to Harvard.
That's exactly it. It's a shortcut for trust. Investors are busy. They use heuristics. Aileen Lee did a famous study showing that Stanford and Harvard produce the most unicorn founders, billion-dollar startups. It just signals to investors that you've been vetted by a prestigious institution. It lowers their perceived risk.
But Ash, one of the authors, didn't go to university. He's the dropout, so how did he compete?
He relied on the other side of the E. Expertise, self-taught expertise. He read books, he broke things, he built things on his own. Expertise can be self-taught, especially in fields like coding, sales, or digital marketing. And in some ways, self-taught expertise is more valuable because it demonstrates incredible drive. It shows you don't need a professor standing over you to learn. If you walk into a room and say, "I have a degree in marketing," that's good. If you say, "I built a website that generated $1 million in sales from my bedroom," that is so much better.
That's a great point. Finally, we have status.
Status is your personal brand. It's your network. It is how people perceive you before you even open your mouth.
It feels a little bit like the signaling from the education section. How are they different?
They're related, for sure. But status can also be social status. Who do you know? If you're Yuan Blair, your status is son of the former prime minister. That opens doors that are locked and bolted for everyone else. But you can also build status. You can become a thought leader on Twitter or LinkedIn. You can build a reputation for being incredibly reliable. Status is essentially trust at scale. When you have high status, people take your calls. When you have low status, you are sent to voicemail.
So we have the full framework now. MILES. Money, intelligence, location, education, status. The goal of this deep dive isn't just to understand these concepts, but to actually use them.
Exactly. Stop looking at Elon Musk. Stop looking at the billionaires on Instagram and feeling inadequate. It's not about them. Look at your own hand. What cards are you holding right now?
You do a personal audit. Maybe you don't have money. Okay, accept that constraint.
Yeah.
But do you have insight? No. Go ride a bike like Will Shu did. Find it.
Do you have location? No. Can you move? Or can you leverage the internet to make your location completely irrelevant?
It's all about finding your specific point of leverage. If you're an introvert, maybe your advantage is deep analytical intelligence. If you're broke, maybe your advantage is that desperate resourcefulness that your rich competitors completely lack. It really all comes back to that serenity prayer concept we touched on earlier. Accept the unfairness. Life isn't fair. The playing field is tilted.
But once you accept that it's tilted, you can stop complaining about the hill and start figuring out how to use gravity to your advantage.
I love that. The provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today is this. If you are waiting for a level playing field, you will be waiting forever. The deck is stacked. The question is, how can you play the hand you are holding right now to win?
That's a liberating question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It puts the power right back in your hands.
Absolutely. Go do your miles audit, figure out your moat, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
See you then.